Welcome back to SwitchCorner. My name is Alex and today we're going to be taking a look at Fallen Legion Revenants on the Nintendo Switch. This RPG, though, for sure it has some unique elements, so is it worth your cash and is it worth the add to your library? Well, hit subscribe if you love the Switch, as much as we all do here, join our growing family, and let's get started. So story, and we actually have two characters here that we will be concerning ourselves with. We get Lucien, a charismatic politician, and then Ghost Rowena. In this world, humanity has all but been wiped out, and the remnants of society, they reside in a floating castle that's ruled over by a madman by the name of Ivor. Lucien, he wants to overthrow them, he wants to liberate the people, while Rowena, she wants to free her son, Edwin. Working together, though, will be the only path to success, so expect to be visiting both characters frequently, where Lucien will be kind of providing a whole lot of the story and Rowena the battle elements of the game. The story, it's okay. I felt like there was a whole lot of talking, honestly, but very little depth, and I never really felt a connection to the political intrigue it was kind of going for. Rowena's then, saving her son's story, a little bit easier to get on board with, but still same thing, very little to it, and I did get a bit bored towards the end of the game. So gameplay wise, we have two pieces here, side-scrolling exploration and conversation, then side-scrolling battles. And let's start with what I think most of you will be here for, the battles. And this is, I've got to say, some intense stuff with a whole host of elements that are just happening all at once. It's not quite action-based, but for sure almost think real-time turn-based. I'm not really sure how to best describe it, but basically your attacks and your enemies' attacks, they're built around a cooldown system, so they will attack frequently as soon as they're ready, and often in teams of more than one. Each battle run, shall we call it, though, you'll be facing multiple battles. They culminate in a boss moment. You'll be choosing a team of 3 exemplars, though, before you jump into things, and these are warriors under the control of Rowena, who floats above the battlefield. While the initial selection of exemplars will be limited, expected to grow relatively quickly. Each exemplar then not only comes with different attributes, think like health, stamina, all that good stuff, but the trick here is just creating a balance between their special attacks, their range, and then their strength to provide the strongest unit. This can be identified on the pre-battle screen thanks to a handy little party analysis. Each exemplar, though, comes with a couple of different attacks. These are standard attacks which you implement by pressing the corresponding button you see above their heads, and then you also have what's known as a death blow, so just think an overpowered offensive or defensive special. You can also utilize the right stick to target specific squares on the battlefield, as well as move your team across the free space battle area with the left stick. Rowena, though, isn't just floating above the battlefield simply to observe. She gets involved too with her own specials, medical support, and she can also revive those exemplars that fall in battle. This is simple enough. You hold down their corresponding button and they will regenerate their health. This is actually unlimited, but it does get slower and slower the more you use it throughout a run. I've mentioned a lot of special attacks here also, and in general, I don't want you to think you can just use them unlimited. That's not the case. Attacks build up a mana force. That's the blue bar you see in the lower left corner. You need to use this in conjunction with one of your 3 attack points that recharge to kick in one of these specials. The final piece to battle is then defense, and a good defense in the ladder game is going to be essential to, land a victory. You defend with the left trigger and you must time it just right as your foes attack to block. Perfect block not only gives all exemplars now an attack point regenerated, but will reflect projectiles back at your enemies as well. For the most part, I gotta say, I really enjoyed the combat. It never really changes from beginning to end, but the nice selection of exemplars added for variety, building a strategy around, their attack patterns, those that may push or pull a foe, that was generally rewarding. And then overall, it definitely had me on the edge of my seat at many moments. My only real complaint later in the experience, it definitely goes for a strategy of simply trying to overwhelm me, a ton of powerful enemies on screen basically. I wish they'd tried something a little bit more strategic and had me use that brain power. This also, though, led to an issue for me where the controls, they didn't quite feel as responsive as they needed to be at points, and often my input would just feel like it wasn't maybe registering. Not the whole experience, as I say, maybe just that last 20%. Lucien, then, the politician's piece of the gameplay, a little less exciting. Move on a 2D plane, talk to the folks around you, basically around this castle, make the occasional decision and try to impact the party while also supporting Rowena. An early example of this, you need to spy all the food in the castle for a transport scenario to occur because Rowena needs that. They tried a stealth element to the gameplay as well, but it was pretty dull honestly, and quickly this part of the gameplay defaulted for me into run around as quickly as possible, talk to everyone and make that occasional decision. You can also uncover new exemplars and make the odd potion. Not a lot else I can say honestly, it's a few tiny locations that get relatively dull quickly, and the at times slow storyline just led to me wanting these over sooner rather than later. They've done what they can with an undercooked story is probably the best way to put it. So problems, and well, first off, it is repetitive, but I did find a lot to like in the battles. I think a bigger focus on battles, less on story, would have probably been, an instant victory for this one. But my big issue, I had a couple of crashes. Now, normally a couple of crashes I could honestly survive, but in this case, they were towards the back end of the game when things got bloody difficult, and they both resulted in me just losing a huge chunk of progression, maybe 40 to 45 minutes. With a game that is so challenging towards that end, this was disappointing, and it really needs a reliable autosave or a fix as soon as possible, because in these moments I did walk away because I was just seriously frustrated. Overall, I enjoyed maybe the first half outside of the walking and talking, but that just started to wear things super quick a lot sooner. But the back half, the experience just gets a little cheap with overwhelmed tactics and then those crashes. There's good ideas then too, but it didn't quite have as much depth as I expected, with some simple enough team strategy, some very minor crafting, and then weapon development. Also, the game's explanation, while I'm on that point just very quickly, any of these areas, the tutorials, definitely also undercooked as well. A lot of the time I kind of had to learn trial by fire. So visually I like it for the most part, but it is a little bland if I'm being honest. I love the character designs, the exemplars in particular look great in battle with some real nice attack animations. Rowena for sure captures that ghostly vibe they were shooting for, and Lucien just absolutely looks like that period piece style politician. Then the supporting cast as well, it's not huge, but there's enough variety here that you shouldn't be disappointed. The world though that they exist within, it's okay but repetitive. The Lucien pieces rarely change things up. You're going to just basically jump around maybe 5 or 6 different locations at the castle, that really is about it. And then the battles, they tend to sit with one very distinct style for each run. So let's say you start with buildings in the background, expect buildings the whole run. You start with forest, same thing, you're going to see forest the whole run. You get the idea there, but visually it just didn't give me that sense of progression that I think would have been a good thing for the game. Menus then, again, decent enough, but a little clunky. There's no simple inventory screen, and there's a lot thrown at you all at once. This visually feels like it just kind of grabbed all of its ideas and, stick it in one place with no real consideration of how overwhelming that could be. Audio finally, and again it's average honestly. The music's decent enough, but I wouldn't call it particularly memorable. RPGs are known for their incredible soundtracks, ones you will listen to offline. This isn't one of them, rather it checks the boxes of the stereotypical RPG soundtrack. Fortunately then, the game does do a decent job on the sound effect front, bringing a weight to the battles, and it's a game where there is some voice acting as well, but not all the way through. It tries to kind of deceive you in the opening hours with full voice acting before it slowly disappears, only to return very occasionally. They did the same thing like this with Trails of Cold Steel 3. I was disappointed there when it left the game, and I'm feeling very much the same way here. So overall, Fallen Legion Revenants is a game I was really excited for. This battle style I really do like, but I think the best way to describe the entire game is just undercooked. For every good point, there's at least a couple of issues or just simply underdeveloped areas. The main issue though here, it's an RPG with a story that just didn't hook me, and it meant I really didn't care all that much honestly. The Lucien bits are basically run around, click on everyone until you have the required conversation, and that's a problem when the game should be, drumming up excitement in these moments for that next battle, giving me purpose for that next Rowena moment. The fights then, fun though frustrating at the end, where it simply relies on overwhelming you rather than actually challenging your skill. But even these ended up honestly leaving a sour taste in my mouth because You know, after a couple of crashes had me repeating brutally difficult moments, that's not an easy thing to kind of get over. I like the core of this one, but it needs a whole lot more in every area, and at this price I just can't justify a recommendation from me. Today, an average 5 out of 10. It's a good combat system that's sadly just lacking nearly everywhere else, and I just found it honestly kinda dull. Will you be adding this one to your collection though, and are you as disappointed as me? This was a big one. I was actually really psyched for this release. And NIS America, one of my favourites out there, they rarely miss. With that though, a shout out then to the patrons of the channel who are just going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. It helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. If you do want to check that out for yourself, I have linked it in the video description down below. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch, as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.